גדול אלוהי, שירו כי גדול אלוהי, כל אחד יראה כי גדול אלוהי. ראוי להלל, ליבי ישיר כי גדול אלוהי. שם מעל כל שם, אותך ראוי להלל, כי גדול אלוהי. How great is our God? Sing with me, how great is our God, and all will see how great, how great, how great is our God. שירו כי גדול אלוהי, כל אחד יראה כי גדול גדול אלוהי. גדול אלוהי, שירו כי גדול
גדול אלוהי.
O daughters of Zion, O Abraham's sons, hear the words of your father, hear his promise of love. I will make you a blessing, so count the stars if you can. You will be a great nation. I will give you this land. I will bring you back home. I'll bring you back home, oh my children. You will no longer roam, lost and alone in the night. There is nothing on earth that could take you away. Once I gather you under my wings, I will bring you all back home again. Though you've wandered like strangers to the ends of the earth, I will send you a Savior. I will finish my work. You have no other shepherd. You have no other Lord. Green pastures are waiting in Zion once more. I will bring you back home. I'll bring you back home, oh my children. You will no longer roam, lost and alone in the night. There is nothing on earth that could take you away. Once I gather you under my wings, I will bring you all back home. So we pray for the peace, but look to the east, for the sunrise is sudden and fierce. Every prophet and priest and king in the city will look on the one they've pierced. We will mourn for the one we've pierced. But don't fear, oh my daughters, or sons of Abraham, for I will wash you with water, I will offer the Lamb. Though your sins were like scarlet, they'll be whiter than snow. I have always been with you. I will never let go. I will bring you back home. I'll bring you back home, oh my children. You will no longer roam, lost and alone in the night. There is nothing on earth that could take you away. I will gather you under my wings. I will bring you all back home. Oh, I will bring you all back home again. Adonai Elohim, Adonai Echad, Shema Israel, Adonai Elohim, Adonai.
This was my normal pleasantries. Join me in saying the blessing. Blessed are you,
Lord our God, King of the universe, who has
sanctified
sanctified us
in his commandments, and commanded us to engross ourselves in the words of Torah. and in Hebrew.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kedeshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzavanu le'asot v'divrei Torah.
So we're doing Vayera. Don't know what that means, right? He appeared. So we start with Genesis 18, 1 through 14. Yahweh appeared to him by the oaks of Mamre as he sat at the door of his tent in the heat of the day. He lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, 3 men were standing in front of him. When he saw them, he ran from the tent door to meet them and bowed himself to the earth and said, O Lord, if I have found favor in your sight, do not pass by your servant. Let a little water be brought, and wash your feet, and rest yourself under the tree, while I bring a morsel of bread, that you may refresh yourselves, and after that you may pass on, since you have come to your servant. So they said, Do as you have said. And Abraham went quickly into the tent to Sarah and said, Quick, 3 seahs of fine flour, knead it and make cakes. And Abraham ran to the herd and took a calf, tender and good, and he gave it to a young man who prepared it quickly. Then he took curds and milk and the calf that he had prepared and set it before them. And he stood by them under the tree while they ate. They said to him, Where is Sarah your wife? And he said, She is in the tent. The Lord said, I will surely return to you about this time next year, and Sarah your wife shall have a son. And Sarah was listening at the door of the tent behind him. Now Abraham and Sarah were old, advanced in years. The way of women had ceased to be with Sarah. So Sarah laughed to herself, saying, After I am worn out, and my Lord is old, shall I have pleasure? And Yahweh said to Abraham, Why did Sarah laugh and say, Shall I indeed bear a child, now that I am old? Is anything too hard for Yahweh? At the appointed time I will return to you, about this time next year, and Sarah shall have a son. So where did Abraham appear to them? To Abraham, where did God appear to Abraham?
Oaks. Memory.
The trees of Mamre. And what was Mamre? Who was Mamre?
Teacher.
Hmm?
Teaching. Teacher, to teach.
No, who?
Oh, who?
Who? He was one of the Philistines, right? They went to war with Abraham to get Lot back. So does anybody know what Bakur Kolim means in Hebrew? Bakur Kolim?
It's plural.
Yes. Visiting the sick.
know that.
It ends in im.
I am.
Yes. Etymology.
I teach English.
Bakur Kolim means visiting the sick. So what was supposedly had happened to Abraham 3 days before the angels showed up? Circumcision. He and his son. So what did the sages say the reason that God showed up on that day was?
We were there.
Yeah, he was visiting the sick. He was recovering from his circumcision. And the 3rd day is when, that's when the worst part is. What else happened on the 3rd day of circumcision to Jacob's sons? They went into Shechem and killed all the, because they had agreed to be circumcised, and on the 3rd day they went in and killed them all.
Simeon and Levi?
Simeon and Levi and Reuben. The oldest 3. Judah wasn't a part of it. How did Abraham address his visitors? What did he call them? He called them Lord, indicating that Abraham understood that that was God. So, why do you think he knew it was God? No, nobody knows? Nobody wants to know?
We want to know. We want
We're in suspense.
Well, I don't know either, but it says,
The Torah defines that it's Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh.
yes, it's fine, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. It doesn't say Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh until later. He just calls him Lord here. But,
Right off the beginning it does.
but it, no, it says Lord. I think it says Lord.
Second word into the Torah portion, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh.
Yeah, but that's not him speaking to him. This is Abraham speaking back to him. He says, Lord, if I have found favor in your eyes, which is Adonai.
Mm-hmm.
So he realizes who it is, but he doesn't say his name. So why did Abraham say, sit under the trees and I will get some water for your feet? I told you the answer to this last year. Y'all don't remember?
Because it's hot and they're in Israel, sit under the trees and they have shade.
Yeah,
And he's
shade
gonna
trees,
gonna
it's
get the
hot.
barbecue ready.
Get you some water for your feet. Why does he get water for the feet though?
Well, they have to wash their feet because they're dusty from their trip, from their journey,
Mhm.
and then they need some water to replenish their thirst. And it's gonna take a while to butcher animals and cook them,
Yeah.
and all that other
Sit down.
stuff.
And they need to be clean to eat unleavened bread.
It's like, they're gonna go get this animal and kill it, they gotta butcher this thing.
Part of the tradition and the culture is that when you had a guest, if you didn't have a servant to wash their feet, you washed their feet.
Yeah.
Right.
Who was the three men?
The three men. The Lord, Michael, and Gabriel. That's the tradition.
That's it.
Okay, the reason that he wanted them to wanted them to wash their feet is because the culture of the time thought that having dirty feet meant that you were working hard and it was part of your success, because it showed that you were a hard worker. You know, your feet, you were moving, you were going, you were doing things. And Abraham considered it a profane thing that they were proud of dirty feet. And so giving them water to wash their feet was saying clean your feet, because, you know, it's a godly thing. You know, God wants people to be refreshed and be, you know, when they enter, and not be proud of their own actions, but be humble.
So that's a way of resting.
Mm-hmm.
So wash your feet is a way of resting from your labor, because if your feet are dirty, you're like moving around and getting dirty, and then, so if you're washing your feet, you're not doing labor, you're resting.
Well, I know. It just makes you comfortable. I don't think it had anything to do with labor.
Probably courtesy and respect.
Courtesy and respect, yeah.
And it's
So-
kind of like in the Asian culture where they take their shoes off before they go in. If you were to go into his tent, you would wash your feet before you go into the tent as your invited guest.
Yeah.
Because you don't know what your feet have been in along the trail.
So,
It might be donkeys
yeah.
or camels.
You know, it's kind of interesting. It's like what she was saying is that, you know, they got a calf and to butcher it, and he said get 3 seahs of flour, and they said that's like 10 quarts of flour
Yeah, that's,
for 3 men, and then a calf that they're going to butcher.
yeah.
So what did that indicate that Abraham wanted to do?
Make
Barbecue.
you dinner.
He wanted to have a banquet.
Banquet.
You know,
That was.
bread. Yeah, everybody around would come. So, and he also said, bring them some milk and meat. He served milk and meat for dinner. Now, what's unusual about that?
Many have a tradition of not eating milk and meat at the same time.
Well, in Judaism today, they do not eat.
No.
You can't. When I was in Israel, some of us went and got pizza, and other people went next door and got sandwiches. So the pizza had cheese on it, which is milk,
Yeah.
and they wouldn't let you. You couldn't go in and buy your pizza in this restaurant and bring it over to eat with people that were eating meat in the next restaurant, because that was mixing milk and meat together.
Oh, wow.
Wasn't that you were eating it? You couldn't have it in the same room.
Yeah.
Okay, but
Could they
Couldn't put it on the same
bring their
plate.
sandwiches over to the pizza party?
no,
No.
no. But the point being is Abraham served them milk and meat.
Milk and meat.
Milk, cheese and milk, meat.
So and they ate it. So there's really no reason that you can't do that.
Right.
What do we call that?
You're saying that's
A tradition.
Yes.
not. You're saying that's not what boiling a goat or boiling a kid in its mother's milk means.
That's what it doesn't mean that.
Recently I had heard, it may have been Rob told me this morning, that it was an ancient pagan tradition for I think Baal, to boil the meat at the temple that was sacrificed, boil it in the milk. I'd never heard that before, but I thought that was an interesting take.
Could be.
So they, in the pagan religion, they actually boil the meat in the milk?
Yes. I mean, this is the same pagan religion that would fry the babies on the pan to Baal.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It took me a while to realize when they sacrificed their children to Molech that the drum beats were to drown out the screams of the children.
Okay, one more question. What's Hakanasat or king mean? Hakanasat or king? Hospitality. We're supposed to be hospitable. Y'all ever think about hospitality?
Mm-hmm.
When they left, what did Abraham do? This is covered in the next video. What happened when they were getting ready to go down the road? He walked with them, and that's part of hospitality. It's part of welcoming your guests in and then seeing them off.
Well, it's like if someone comes to visit, and if you just let them walk out the door, that doesn't feel right.
Uh-huh.
Walk them to the door.
Or you have your wife do that. Yeah.
Unless it's an in-law, right? Unless it's an in-law,
So you're
right?
like the hospitality. So you walk all the way to the car.
You're walking the right, exactly.
Make sure they do.
Yes.
There you go.
I'll offer their refreshments as well. Okay. I gotta get it right,
That's what we're here for.
Oh, and I forgot this one. Gemilut Kasadim. Gemilut Kasadim. What does that mean? Acts of loving kindness. Kindness. Acts of loving. What are acts of loving kindness?
Grace and mercy.
Grace and mercy. It's really kind of strange. In our society, we don't have, we have neighbors, but we don't know who they are. Now, on our street, if you have a granddaughter that wants to go down the street and meet everybody, and as soon as she meets them, they're her best friend. And so when we go on walks, if their door is open, she wants to go knock on their door and see how they are, and see if they want to come out and talk or whatever. And I have to explain to her, it's 6 o'clock. People probably having dinner right now. They don't want to talk to us.
Right.
But I'm not always successful, and most people will come out and have a conversation, and they're very hospitable. But me and Joplin probably know more people on our block than anybody on our block. But we do have this one interesting neighbor, and she paints rocks.
Oh, wow.
And they just started showing up, like in our flower pot, you would have a little rock, and it would, would say like, "God loves you," and, and then it would have. She painted some, what do you call it, little elves and stuff, and she made little elves, and she put them on one person's flower bed, and then she just goes around and she paints these rocks, makes snowmen and all kinds of stuff, and just puts them around, and then talks to people about them. And then you know how when you trim your trees, you'll have a flat spot on the tree where that maybe this big around. Well, she's gone back and she's painted pictures on their trees on those spots, and it's really kind of cool. I mean, they're not. But she's making everybody get to know each other, because at first everybody says, who's putting these rocks everywhere? And then how come there's stuff painted on this tree? But she finally made herself known, and she had some good reasons. She was celebrating a granddaughter or something that had died, and they had stuff that they had done together, and she had painted rocks with her, and she said, well, I thought just in her memory I'd do this. But people don't think about, it seems like in our society, about being hospitable. They think about having their privacy, having a big fence around their backyard and not knowing their neighbors. Okay, Genesis 18:15-33. But Sarah denied it, saying, I did not laugh, for she was afraid. She said, no. He said, no, but you did laugh. Then the men set out from there, and they looked down toward Sodom, and Abraham went with them to set them on their way. Yahweh said, shall I hide from Abraham what I am about to do, seeing that Abraham shall surely become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him? For I have chosen him, that he may command his children and his household after him to keep the way of Yahweh, by doing righteousness and justice, so that Yahweh may bring to Abraham what he has promised him. Then Yahweh said, because the outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and their sin is very grave, I will go down to see whether they have done altogether according to the outcry that has come to me. And if not, I will know. So the men turned from there and went toward Sodom, but Abraham stood still before Yahweh. Then Abraham drew near and said, will you indeed sweep away the righteous with the wicked? Suppose there are 50 righteous within the city. Will you then sweep away the place and not spare it for the 50 righteous who are in it? Far be it from you to do such a thing, to put the righteous to death with the wicked, so that the righteous fare as the wicked. Far be that from you. Shall not the judge of all the earth do what is just? And Yahweh said, if I find at Sodom 50 righteous in the city, I will spare the whole place for their sake. And Abraham answered and said, behold, I have undertaken to speak to Yahweh, I who am but dust and ashes. Suppose 5 of the 50 righteous are lacking. Will you destroy the whole city for lack of 5? And he said, I will not destroy it, even if I find 45 there. Again, he spoke to him and said, suppose 45 are found there. So suppose 40 are found there. He answered, for the sake of the 40 I will not do it. Then he said, oh, let not Yahweh be angry, and I will speak. Suppose 30 are found there. And he answered, I will not do it if I find 30. And he said, behold, if I have undertaken to speak to Yahweh, suppose 20 are found there. And he answered, for the sake of 20 I will not destroy it. Then he said, oh, let not Yahweh be angry, and I will speak again, but this once. Suppose 10 are found there. And he answered, for the sake of the 10 I will not destroy it. And Yahweh went his way, and when he had finished speaking to Abraham, Abraham returned to his place. So, how do you explain Sarah's denial that she laughed? Well, it says that she laughed to herself internally, that she didn't laugh out loud. She snickered.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So,
Trying to say it was more of a, yeah, right, laugh.
mhm.
Yeah, sure. Whatever.
I was just sitting there thinking, yeah, if you told me, I would, I would laugh, I'm sorry.
Well, see, the whole story to me is kind of a non sequitur, because just here in a little while they're going to go see Abimelech, and she's going to be a beautiful woman, and so he doesn't want to get killed, and she's a beautiful woman, but yet she can't have children. And I guess maybe she was a beautiful woman, and she was barren. I don't know. I mean, she is 90 years old, right? Or about that, 89 years old. Isaac wasn't even born when she was 90. Abraham was 100, or 10 years of difference.
Could it have something to do with that she didn't believe the Lord, or she didn't trust him?
No, I think in reality that, she was past the time of having children. But if she's past time of having children, but she's a beautiful woman and Abimelech wants her. That's why I don't. That's why I say it's confusing to me. When y'all read that, is it confusing to y'all? So why did Yahweh discuss, either with himself or with the people with him, the two angels with him, about should I tell what I'm going to do to Sodom and Gomorrah? Should I tell Abraham?
Was it telepathic communication?
Well, it doesn't say. He just says, should I tell Abraham I'm going to
And
do this
Abraham's
thing?
right there?
Should I hide it from him?
Yeah, should I hide it from him? I don't know. I mean,
I thought it was because the relationship between the father and Abraham.
yeah.
He had a strong relationship with Abraham as the leader and prince of that area. Why should I don't need to hide it from somebody of that influence level. And he had a good relationship with him.
Well, and Lot lived
Uh-huh.
in Sodom. So, anyway,
Do you think it had to do with Lot? Tell Abraham what I'm going to do with Sodom and Gomorrah because Lot is there?
yeah. Well, I mean, all those things play a part. But what does it mean when he says, should I, and then he immediately tells him? Well, it says in the text, he said, this is Abraham, who I have told I'm going to make a great nation, and the whole world is going to be blessed. All nations will be blessed through him. And he says, why wouldn't I tell him? If I'm willing to bless the whole world for him, it will make him understand the kind of person I think he is. And, sometimes we have the same thing that happens to us, in that you have a relationship with somebody, either at work or in a church or whatever, and you want to raise them up, you want to promote them or whatever. But you say, well, there's all these things going on internally. Do I want to identify that and put that burden on them? But how can you bring them up if you don't trust them? And that's what God was saying here. He says, how can I do this thing and not tell Abraham? Because then I would say I do not trust him with that kind of information. Do you see what I mean? It's he says what that is. He was doing it in the way of the Lord. I read that. I think I underlined that there. I have to go back and look. he says, in the way of the Lord, to do righteousness and justice. So what is righteousness and justice? Why is he attacking Sodom for righteousness and justice?
He's destroying them because of his righteous judgment and justice, because their policy is a policy of not friendship, not chesed, but anti-chesed, which would be violence to whoever, we could say Hamas.
Well, right. If the way of the Lord is righteousness and justice, that's the way. In other words, kind of like when Jesus said, I'm the way, I'm the truth, the light, the way. And so he was intimating that God's relationship with Abraham and the way of justice brings judgment on those that defy God. And that's what Sodom and Gomorrah did. In other words, they not only defied God, but they defied the principles of hospitality, of charity, of goodness, of all those things. I mean, and we see when the angels go to Sodom and Gomorrah that they didn't want to welcome them in a hospitable way. They wanted to defile them. So the way of righteousness is the way of Abraham. So when we read about Lot, what does Lot do that shows that he's influenced by Abraham?
Ask them to come to his house.
No, he begs them to come to his house.
Get off the street.
Get off the street, because he knows what's coming. Okay, but he's in the midst of it. You know, I mean, that's like us picking out a spot in Amarillo where all the drug dealing and all the bad stuff is going on, and we say, there's a lot of money down there to be made. I think I'm going to go move next door to it. You know, I mean, really. I mean, he's right in the midst of it.
Yes.
Somewhere along the line, I got the idea that one of Abraham's attributes was compassion. And this was an opportunity for the Lord to allow Abraham to demonstrate his compassion as well as his ability to negotiate.
Right.
He keeps negotiating down 50, 40, 45, 30, 20.
Yeah.
So,
And he gets the 10, and what does the 10 represent?
The whole family, all of Lot, his wife, and the children, and their mates. His complete outreach of influence that he should have had as a family in Sodom.
Right.
If just Lot's family is righteous and will, but not even they came out.
Yep. That's a good answer. It's not what I was asking though. 10, what does 10 represent in Judaism?
Yeah,
A minion?
a minion,
A
but
minion.
also completeness,
Right.
the hand.
Well, a minion is, you can have a prayer service, you can have a meeting if you have 10.
Yeah, right. But also the way of the Lord being justice and righteousness, the Lord says, I desire righteous and justness
Over sacrifice.
over sacrifice. So that could be applied here too.
So, do you think that Abraham went far enough when he stopped at 10? What if you had been one guy and you were righteous and you lived there? I mean, that's the big question. Where does it stop? Will you sacrifice? Is it better to let all those evil people live for the sake of one? That one definite no over here. Well,
Might be able to glean a little bit out, because here in a little bit he goes to another place that's going to be destroyed. There's only 3 of them. And he says, I can't do anything until you leave.
mhm.
The negotiator always knows the bottom line, and somehow Abraham's bottom line must have been 10.
Yes.
And I think Donald may be onto it there. So,
Yeah.
I don't know any of that, but.
We don't have the video or the recording, so
Yeah, the notes for that meeting were lost.
And is it possible that there were 10 members in his family?
That's kind of what Donald was saying.
that's what Donald was saying.
Well,
I think that's
and
a
two,
good rationale.
and the 2 unmarried ones that left with him, their fiancés didn't come.
Right.
So they were the two of the potential. I can't remember where the family is listed, but it's somewhere.
What is that word?
14.
In Jewish tradition states that there are always 36 hidden righteous people who keep the world itself from being destroyed by fire. That's a Lamed Vavnik. A Lamed Vavnik. I can't remember what the word Vavnik. It's Lamed Vav is 36. But Lamed Vavnik is 36 righteous. In other words, for the sake of the 36, God does not destroy the world. Y'all ever heard that? Well, it's not biblical. It's just
Tradition.
a
Tradition, I think, yeah.
a tradition.
I don't think there was 36 on
Yard. No. Okay, Genesis 19, 1 through 20. The 2 angels came to Sodom in the evening, and Lot was sitting in the gate of Sodom. And when Lot saw them, he rose to meet them and bowed himself with his face to the earth and said, My lords, please turn aside to your servant's house and spend the night and wash your feet. Then you may rise up early in the morning and go on your way. They said, No, we will spend the night in the town square. But he pressed them strongly, so they turned aside to him and entered his house. And he made them a feast and baked unleavened bread, and they ate. But before they lay down, the men of the city, the men of Sodom, both young and old, all the people to the last man, surrounded the house. And they called to Lot, Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us, that we may know them. And Lot went out to the men at the entrance, shut the door after him, and said, I beg you, my brothers, do not act so wickedly. Behold, I have 2 daughters who have not known any man. Let me bring them out to you, and do to them as you please. Only do nothing to these men, for they have come under the shelter of my roof. But they said, Stand back. And they said, This fellow came to sojourn, and he has become the judge. Now we will deal worse with you than with them. Then they pressed hard against the man Lot. They drew hard against the man Lot and drew near to break the door down. But the men reached out their hands and brought Lot into the house with them and shut the door. And they struck with blindness the men who were at the entrance of the house, both small and great, so that they wore themselves out, groping for the door. Then the man said to Lot, Have you anyone else, sons-in-law, sons, daughters, or anyone who have in the city? Bring them out of the place, for we are about to destroy this place, because the outcry against his people has become great before Yahweh, and Yahweh has set us to destroy it. So Lot went out and said to his sons-in-law, who were to marry his daughters, Up, get out of this place, for Yahweh is about to destroy the city. But he seemed to his sons-in-law to be jesting. As morning dawned, the angels urged Lot, saying, Up, take your wife and your 2 daughters who are here, lest you be swept away with the punishment of the city. But he lingered. So the men seized him and his wife and his 2 daughters by the hand, Yahweh being merciful to him, and they brought him out and set him outside the city. And as they brought them out, one said, Escape for your life. Do not look back or stop anywhere in the valley, Escape to the hills, lest you be swept away. And Lot said to them, O no, my lords, behold, your servant has found favor in your sight, and you have shown me great kindness in saving my life. But I cannot escape to the hills, lest the disaster overtake me and I die. Behold, the city is near enough to flee to, and it is little one. Let me escape there. Is it not a little one, and my life will be saved? So, when did the two angels come to Sodom in the evening? Nobody knows? What does tradition say? Nobody knows what the tradition says? It says that after God told Abraham he was going to destroy the city, that he spent the day praying for Sodom. That if anyone was righteous, that they would be saved. So while he was praying, they waited not to destroy it. They were going to wait to the next morning. So, why was Lot sitting in the gate when he saw him? He was sitting in the gate. Why was he sitting in the gate? It says why. He was a judge.
Yeah.
He'd been in the city long enough and gained
it.
enough prestige that he was a judge in the city.
But the fall there is he didn't have much influence.
So Lot became a judge in the city. Psalm 1, y'all know Psalm 1? Blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, nor stand in the way of sinners, nor sit in the seat of scoffers. First Lot walked toward Sodom by selfishly desiring worldly gain. Then he stood in the way of the sinners, moving his tent closer to the sinner. And finally he sat in the seat of the scorners, and his mind became debased. Toward the scorners he is scornful, but to the humble he gives favor. So what does this say about Lot? He had kind of slipped a little bit from the way of Abraham, hadn't he?
Yeah.
So why was he given protection?
Because he was Abraham's relative.
In the merit of Abraham.
Well, he practiced hospitality. He ran and implored them to come to his house and to protect them. So that's why in Peter says that Lot was righteous because of his action with the angels. In other words, he saw them as strangers and wanted to protect them because he knew where he lived. He knew his circumstances, but he lived there anyway. I don't know. I think that Lot is kind of like a lot of people.
Lot was for Lot.
Yeah, Lot was for Lot. But he did have a sense of hospitality. I mean, he brought him into his house. What did it is? It says that he fixed them a banquet,
Yeah.
unleavened bread and so forth. So,
Yeah.
and he said, "What?" I mean, if you notice, he said, "Wash your feet." I mean, he had some of Abraham's training in him. So it wasn't that he was totally debased, but he was affected by the world. And that's, to me, that's our problem, that we let ourselves be affected by the world, what other people think. So, now what's the deal on all the guys when they gather around his house after they've eaten, and they gather around the house and they say, "Okay, send those guys out that you took into your house so that we may know them." So, I don't know, I mean, it's almost like everybody sent around and said, "Some new guys are here, put the word out, some new guys are here, coming into town." And so then Lot gets them and they say, "Oh, that stinking Lot, he took them down to his house." Okay, so, and it says every man in town, from the oldest to the least, not one was missing. They all went to his house.
I think that indicates just how debased they were.
Mhm.
I mean, for the whole male community together, that just, it's wicked.
Yeah. But did you notice when Lot went out, what did he say?
Which time?
He said, "My brothers."
Yeah.
He called them my brothers, as he knew them all.
Yeah.
See, that's kind of an indictment there. And then what it is, he offered his 2 virgin daughters. Have you seen the 119 Ministries deal on the virgin daughters?
Is that a indication that he asked them to, become normal, or?
Well, he just said, "Take my daughters and leave these men alone."
But don't you think he knew they wouldn't? Surely he wouldn't have done it to his daughters.
He could have been insulting them right to their face with his daughters, knowing that they were not in that way, and they were so berserk that he knew what was going to happen, that the focus would come off of getting to his company, his visitors, to focus on him, and now because they wanted to kill him right after that. And if you talk to, I don't know which piece of TV you can see today, but if you're not of a certain way in certain circles, they will attack you. They will even attack people. Like I remember some story years ago out in California, there was a different baseball league, and they ran people off for not being that way enough. So,
Yeah.
If we think about Islam now, the people have a love of death and unkindness, especially to Jews, but just as a way of being, and they are against homosexuality, and yet homosexuality is okay if it's just used as an aggressive battle tactic. And so, in the unkindness of Sodom, they want to be good Sodomites and sodomize these people and show them their unkindness. And yet, Lot's 2 daughters, who were betrothed to men in that city. So were their husbands or their betrothed men also in that group? I don't know. It's just something to be in the conversation of that. It's the unkindness of and hatred that was not just Sodom, but there were 7 cities around the Dead Sea that were all destroyed.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about the Muslims. Thank goodness. But you know, the world is attacking us the same way. I mean, look at what's going on. I mean, they're trying to change the school curricula. They're reading things to kids that is absurd. And then if you try to stand in their way, they're doing the same thing that Sodom did there. We're going to destroy you. You can't do this because, you know, evil is good and good is evil. And that's the same thing. We live in Sodom. I mean, these things are happening this day. You know, they have stuff that they read at the libraries in some cities in Texas that they've, you know, about homosexuality and, you know, all that stuff. It's insane. But in the midst of this, when Lot's being attacked, what do the angels do? They struck all the men with blindness.
Yeah.
And so
and yank him into the house so that he can't get killed.
Right. But it says they wore themselves out groping for the door. Now that's an unusual word, groping. Groping for the door.
Kind of fits the context of what
Yeah,
that's about.
Right. But he struck them with blindness. And, you know, in Hebrew thought, that's like for like. You know, their judgment, because they were blind and couldn't see good from evil, they were struck blind so that they couldn't find good. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It was a like punishment for their crime. So it's kind of like saying they had a chance to see that they were going to be destroyed. I mean, evidently, Lot was telling his prospective son-in-laws, and they said they thought he was just joking. So it was kind of like there was a chance for somebody to be redeemed, wasn't there?
A lot of people probably thought Noah was joking when he was like, it's going to get ugly pretty soon.
Yeah.
Gonna be a big rain. You don't want to be here.
So the deal, the part of the story that really gets me is they finally get their hands, they get him out of town, and Lot says, well, I can't make it to the hills. Just let me go over here to Zoar. And Zoar was one of the cities that was going to be destroyed. But he said, I'll spare that city because it's small. So that city got spared because of Lot. But why couldn't Lot make it to the hills? They told him go to the hills, and he said, I can't make it. I'll get destroyed. Did he think he was too old?
He's just probably, I mean, that's the lowest point on earth. And you have to make it up that hill. It's a big, maybe he's just out of shape from sitting at the gate. In the plush little land that it was at the time.
I think he still was attracted to the city. He didn't want to separate himself to himself.
Yeah.
He had chosen to go there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so too.
But then he doesn't stay there. He goes to a cave.
Yeah.
Does it say that here? No, it doesn't say that.
We'll get there.
We will get there. But anyway, so the angels, they get tired of messing with him, and they just say, okay, go there, we'll spread the city, and then they so
Do missionaries go where there's already righteous people, or do they go where there's people that are unrighteous and try to spread the word?
Both.
Yes, but
There's always some righteous. I don't care where you're going. There's always some.
Somewhere. That's where I'm kind of.
Yeah.
I haven't seen where it specifically says in Scripture that Lot was unrighteous.
And
I've seen where Peter says
righteous.
he is righteous. So I think it's dangerous for myself. I'll leave it that way, but to sit and try to pick all the negative things here that we see that happen around him when everybody stumbles. I mean, we're people. But he made it to being a judge, so he may have been trying. And if you know people you've been trying to help are going to die, you wouldn't necessarily, it would be another point of righteousness to me, to not want to just let them die. I understand it's God coming, but I don't want to see people that I know are just dirty die. I'd rather see them turn and repent and live. I don't want to see them, but there comes a point when you gotta.
yeah, there's a point of no return. Yeah.
And I don't.
So we still have free choice.
If there's no reason, if there's not a point of return, then there's not really a whole lot of reason for Abraham to pray for him.
Right.
So I think it's all.
But that fits all of us.
Yeah.
That fits all of us. Okay. Genesis 19:21 through 19:21 through 21:4. He said to him, behold, I grant you this favor also, that I will not throw the city of which you have spoken. I will not overthrow the city of which you have spoken. Escape there quickly, for I can do nothing till you arrive there. Therefore, the name of the city was called Zoar. The sun had risen on the earth when Lot came to Zoar. Then Yahweh rained on Sodom and Gomorrah sulfur and fire from Yahweh out of heaven, and he overthrew those cities and all the valley and all the inhabitants of the cities, what grew on the ground. But Lot's wife behind him looked back, and she became a pillar of salt. And Abraham went early in the morning to the place where he had stood before Yahweh. And he looked down toward Sodom and Gomorrah and toward all the land of the valley. And he looked, and behold, the smoke of the land went up like the smoke of a furnace. So it was that, when God destroyed the cities of the valley, God remembered Abraham and sent Lot out of the midst of the overthrow, when he overthrew the cities in which Lot had lived. Now Lot went up from Zoar and lived in the hills with his 2 daughters, for he was afraid to live in Zoar. So he lived in a cave with his 2 daughters. And the firstborn said to the younger, Our father is old, and there is not a man on earth to come into us after the manner of all the earth. Come, let us make our father drink wine, and we will lie with him, that we may preserve offspring from our father. So they made their father drink wine that night. And the firstborn went in and lay with her father. He did not know when she lay down nor when she arose. The next day the firstborn said to the younger, Behold, I lay last night with my father. Let us make him drink wine tonight also. Then you go in and lie with him, that we may preserve offspring from our father. So they made their father drink wine that night also. And the younger arose and lay with him, and he did not know when she lay down or when she arose. Thus both the daughters of Lot became pregnant by their father. Their firstborn bore a son, called his name Moab. He is the father of the Moabites to this day. The younger also bore a son, and called his name Ben-Ami. He is the father of the Ammonites to this day. From there Abraham journeyed toward the territory of the Negev, and lived between Kadesh and Shur, and he sojourned in Gerar. And Abraham said to Sarah his wife, She is my sister. And Abimelech king of Gerar sent and took Sarah. But God came to Abimelech in a dream by night, and said to him, Behold, you are a dead man because of the woman whom you have taken, for she is a man's wife. Now Abimelech had not approached her. So he said, Lord, will you kill an innocent people? Did he not say to me, She is my sister? And she herself said, He is my brother. In the integrity of my heart and in the innocence of my hands I have done this. Then God said to him in the dream, Yes, I know that you have done this in the integrity of your heart, and it was I also who kept you from sinning against me. Therefore I did not let you touch her. Now then, return the man's wife, for he is a prophet, so that he will pray for you, and you shall live. But if you do not return her, know that you shall surely die, you and all who are yours. So Abimelech rose early in the morning, called all his servants, and told them all these things. And the men were very much afraid. Then Abimelech called Abraham and said to him, What have you done to us? Now how have I sinned against you, that you have brought on me and my kingdom a great sin? You have done to me things that ought not to be done. And Abimelech said to Abraham, What do you see that you did this thing? Abraham said, I did it because I thought, there is no fear of God at all in this place, and they will kill me because of my wife. Besides, she is indeed my sister, the daughter of my father, though not the daughter of my mother, and she became my wife. And when God caused me to wander from my father's house, I said to her, This is the kindness you must do for me. At every place to which we come, say of me, He is my brother. Then Abimelech took sheep and oxen and male servants and female servants, and gave them to Abraham, and returned Sarah to his wife to him. And Abimelech said, Behold, my land is before you. Dwell where it pleases you. So Sarah, he said, Behold, I have given your brother 1,000 pieces of silver. It is a sign of your innocence in the eyes of all who are with you, and before everyone you are vindicated. Then Abimelech prayed to God, and God healed Abimelech and healed his wife and female slaves, so that they bore children. For Yahweh had closed all the wombs of the house of Abimelech because of Sarah, Abraham's wife. Yahweh visited Sarah as he had said, and Yahweh did to Sarah as he had promised. And Sarah conceived and bore Abraham a son in his old age, at the time of which God had spoken to him. Abraham called the name of his son, who was born to him, whom Sarah had bore him, Isaac. And Abraham circumcised his son Isaac when he was 8 days old, as God had commanded him. So What do you guys think about destroying with sulfur and fire? Sulfur and fire. That's hard to say for me.
What'd you say?
Brimstone.
Fire and brimstone. Fire and brimstone. Sulfur and fire. Destroying the cities. He rained sulfur and fire. Fire and brimstone.
Well, I thought it was cool when they took those little sulfur balls
Mm-hmm.
and dug them up, and that state of sulfur in the crystalline state that it's found is found no place else on the planet.
Right.
It's not a natural state of sulfur on the planet, and that it came from heaven. And I was, just thinking that God was spinning the earth around, and the earth is spinning in orbit, and he launched a fireball from the sun, one of those solar flares, and it landed at a certain time, and he's working all that. They go, boy, that guy's got some, God's got some math. He's got some math.
I think he invented it.
Yeah, I think he still invented math.
So, why was Lot's wife turned to a pillar of salt?
Because she looked back.
Do y'all know what the backstory on that is?
Because she looked from behind him.
She longed for her old life. She didn't want to go to a new life.
I like the story that the sages say. The Midrash says that she turned into salt because she refused to pass the salt to her husband during the feast with the angels. You can't make this stuff up.
That's another good one.
The rabbis used this story to justify the dubious practice of washing your hands after you eat, to ceremonially remove the salt of Sodom that might have been included in the meal from your hands. I think Yeshua had a problem with that, don't y'all?
I've always been kind of curious if it didn't have something to do with, I don't think a loving God would necessarily want you to see the wrath of what he's, wouldn't want you to see him literally in his angry mode if he was saving you.
But I do understand that they have historically found a salt pillar that they actually think was her.
Yeah, I've seen-
Josephus writes of having seen her.
yeah, I've seen that.
And there's I guess there's more tradition that say that she was covered, and which is what Josephus I think writes. She was covered in salt, not like wasn't herself poop made into salt, but she was covered in it. You could see her body
She
preserved
was
inside
like
there.
entombed in the salt.
Yeah.
Entombed in the salt. It says turned to salt. I don't know. So what do y'all think about the Lot's daughters being impregnated by their father?
A necessary evil.
A necessary evil?
Well, we gotta have Ruth, and you gotta.
Well, the deal is they thought the whole world was destroyed, right?
That's what
They
thought.
knew there
They
was
did-
a Zoar, and there
Yeah,
were people
that's-
there.
Right, yeah.
But wasn't Zoar
Why did
burned
they,
up after they went?
They were afraid to be there. They were afraid to go there.
why did he not
But they-
return to Abraham again?
Exactly,
Yeah.
to their family.
To their family.
Well, do you think they had good motives? They said, we need to preserve.
They not.
Well, do you think that Ruth being a Moabitess was justification for their action? She's in the line of Yeshua.
I think God could have done it any way he wanted
I don't
to.
think-
He
I don't-
didn't have to have any sense to do it.
I don't think we could judge their hearts if they were sitting at the table, much less judge their heart from thousands of years ago. I don't. And it says they didn't know. I don't know if they did or didn't. If they
You
maybe
think
saw.
they didn't know about Abraham?
Well, they saw everything burned up. They didn't go to where Abraham was. I don't know if they did or didn't. It says they
They believed
thought the whole world
destroyed.
was.
Yeah.
Yeah,
If they were,
it's
if they
still
were
protocol.
believing, if they were believing, right? Because it's prophecy that the flood and then the next one's fire, right? If they thought that had happened in that short amount of time,
And,
I don't like it, but
and the sages also say that, is like Abraham, or Lot had one eye open. It says that he didn't know, that he had one eye, he was a man and he was drunk and he had one eye open. That he knew what his daughters were doing.
Yeah.
So he had some responsibility in that. You know, you can't just blame it all on the booze.
Right. Or his daughters. But he lived in a place that would,
That
shouldn't
was
be drinking that much
morally
anyway.
right. Yeah.
So, let's move on from them.
Moving on.
next scene,
Next thing. Okay, so now we get to the Abimelech story. And see, this is the one that gets me. This is like it happens so quick. I mean, they've got a year. God meets with them and says, next year at this time you're going to have a son.
And it's about 3 months.
And then all of a sudden they're with Abimelech and he's taking Sarah. And then God afflicts all the people so that they're ill and they can't have children, all this kind of stuff. And then Abimelech has the dream, and Abimelech comes in and says, why are you doing this to me? And he says, well, I thought you'd kill me and not her, blah, blah, blah. So all this happens, but it has to happen,
In a year.
like say,
This is short
within
year.
3 months.
Wouldn't it take 3 months just for Abimelech to know that his women in
Yeah.
his city or in his group are not bearing children?
Yeah.
Or does it
So-
just take 1 month to figure that out?
I don't know. All I'm saying is this had to be a whirlwind deal for it to occur. So, but I mean,
No, go ahead.
I was just saying, to me, it was kind of like it was poor timing. You know, how do you get all this stuff to work out where this is always going to happen in 3 months so that this can happen in 9 months?
Perfect timing.
Perfect timing?
Just
Or maybe she was already pregnant when she went into Abimelech's house. And God didn't allow
That would be
him
confusing.
to touch her.
That would be confusing. Yeah, I don't think that would be right.
Well,
But then you'd
and-
have to say, is it Abimelech? Or,
Hadn't they learned anything from, this is a
Second.
deja vu
Mhm.
as far as
She's done it
sister.
before.
Yeah.
so what? The not knowing Abraham and all that. Why did Abraham and Lot separate in the first place?
The shepherds couldn't get along.
Their shepherds, their servants couldn't get along with each other. Lot wasn't by himself. So that may have been like that. His servants all went the way of the world, and he was, because he wasn't by himself when he went over. You know what I mean? When
Yeah.
he went over
Yeah,
to,
that's true.
when we
Yeah.
read this, we're like, well, Lot, well, it's just him and his three. But that wasn't how it started. They separated because their people were not getting along. So I don't think Lot was tiny.
Oh,
Well, no, he couldn't have been tiny because it said they had so much property
Yes.
Right.
that they couldn't be in the same place.
So those may have been servants that he cared greatly about, that he was just like, dude, y'all gotta stop.
Yeah, could be.
But they're like, no, this is too much fun.
Or they were still out in the wood, out in the valley,
Yeah.
not in the city.
Well,
They didn't pay attention to the floodplain much.
well, the thing about it is that's the problem. Is that we're not familiar with the culture of the Bible. Plus, when we read these things and it says about his herdsmen and Abraham's herdsmen couldn't get along and they ordered over argued over water rights and all these different things.
Start throwing up barbed wire into the hole.
No, the thing about it is we don't live in that culture anymore. You know what I mean? That was in our lifetimes, most of our lifetimes,
Okay.
everything has been automated. And, you know, you buy land and it has fences and you have deeds and property and you don't, you know, even Israel to this day, if you've seen the herdsmen, it's kind of like open range. You have a herd and you just go out through the country and you herd your sheep. And like the Bedouins do. And we see that as desert, but there's actually a lot of grass out there that the sheep and the goats like. And when I was in Israel, we met a sheep herder, a goat herder named Abraham. And he had a bunch of sheep I've told the story before, but the Arabs had stolen 300 of his sheep. And those sheep were worth about $1,000 a piece at the time. There was quite a bit of money. But Abraham was an old guy. He had 10 children. None of them lived with him. But he was still herding these sheep. And he just had a pickup. He had a sheep dog, this big German shepherd. And the dog was just smart as a whip. He could just tell the dog. The dog's name was Caleb. Dog.
Yeah.
Caleb.
Yeah.
But he could just tell the dog, you know, he said, Caleb, here. The dog would just come over and sit down. But it wanted to play with everybody, so the dog was just sitting there doing like this. And it would look at somebody and then it would start moving over toward them, you know. I mean, the dog was really cute. But anyway, but he was a sheep herder. And they had stolen all these sheep. I mean, he had some left. And we asked him, he said, well, he said, well, the government paid me for the sheep. He said, they knew where they were, but they wouldn't get them back. And he said, so they paid me for them. And I was thinking, they paid him $300,000. And he's driving like this old Ford pickup. You know, and I thought, man, why don't you get you a new pickup? That's what I'm thinking. And he said, I didn't want the money. He said, I wanted the sheep.
Yeah.
He said, I raised those sheep. He said, I know the ewes. And he said, I know them. He said, I make some money off of them. But he said, I didn't want them to go to the Arabs. He said, you know, that's not the family. I mean, he had a different attitude about his sheep. And
They knew his voice.
right.
They were
But
his kids.
but the bottom line is he was a guy from New York. And he's telling his story, and he said, when I was a kid growing up, he says, I wanted to have race cars and build race cars and engines and all that kind of stuff. And he said, then things happened, and I came to Israel, and I found out who I was. And he says, I'm not, and his whole comment was, I'm not going back to that person. You know, I'm the person that God made me to be. And anyway, I can say we, have a trouble reading the scripture and putting it into context. Like they've got a bunch of shepherds. They've got hired hands. Abraham has 318 trained men in his camp. What does Lot have if they're too big to be next to each other? And when he goes to Sodom, the reason they don't kill him is because he's not alone.
Right.
You know, and so we read these things, we don't put them together, and so that's why.
And we try to read them with our emotions a lot.
Right, but we don't sit down and pensively try to go through things and understand it, and say, what is God trying to tell me in this scripture? You know, what is the relationship between Abraham and Lot, and Lot and the people in the city? Was he actually a good influence? But when we read in there, it says he is a judge among us. In other words, they have realized he's a judge, and in mine, it's got an exclamation point after judge. In other words, they resent him for his prosperity. Yeah. So there's a lot of things going on here that we should know, but we don't.
And it could have been somebody there telling them, y'all ain't doing right, you better straighten up, and then they show up that day.
That's right.
So they were without excuse.
We have to hurry because it's getting late.
We're talking so
Genesis
much.
21, 5 through 21. And Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. And Sarah said, God has made laughter for me. Everyone who hears will laugh over me. And she said, who would have said to Abraham that Sarah would nurse children? Yet I have borne him a son in his old age. And the child grew and was weaned. And Abraham made a great feast on the day that Isaac was weaned. But Sarah saw the son of Hagar, the Egyptian, whom she had borne to Abraham, laughing. So she said to Abraham, cast out the slave woman with her son, for the son of this slave woman shall not be heir with my son Isaac. And the thing was very displeasing to Abraham on account of his son. But God said to Abraham, be not displeased because of the boy and because of your slave woman. Whatever Sarah says to you, do as she tells you, for though Isaac shall be your offspring, through Isaac your offspring shall be named. And I will make a nation of the son of the slave woman also, because he is your offspring. So Abraham rose early in the morning and took bread and a skin of water and gave it to Hagar, putting it on her shoulder along with the child, and sent her away. And she departed and wandered in the wilderness of Beersheba. When the water in the skin was gone, she put the child under one of the bushes. She then went and sat down opposite him, a good way off, about the distance of a bow shot, for she said, let me not look on the death of the child. And as she was set opposite him, she lifted up her voice and wept. And God heard the voice of the boy, and the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven and said to her, what troubles you, Hagar? Fear not, for God has heard the voice of the boy where he is. Lift up the boy, and hold him fast with your hand, for I will make him into a great nation. And God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. And she went and filled the skin with water, and gave the boy a drink. And God was with the boy, and he grew up and lived in the wilderness and became an expert with the bow. He lived in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother took a wife for him from the land of Egypt. Yes, sir?
So, what questions do you have for that little section? What did the sages say? What did the sages say?
So why was Sarah threatened by the presence of Ishmael? Ishmael was making laughter and mockery of Isaac during the weaning party, right?
He was laughing at laughter?
He was laughing at laughter. So apparently Ishmael regarded himself as the firstborn heir of Abraham, and Sarah was going to put an end to that. You reckon? And what did God say? Sarah's right. Okay, so how does Paul refer to Hagar's descendants in Galatians 4:21 through 31? You know, it's about the slave woman and the son. The son of the slave woman, the son of the wife.
Slave woman, the son's inheritance.
Hagar is Sinai.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a whole story, but what's the bottom line of the story? The son of the slave woman was born according to the flesh, and the son of the free woman was born through the promise. So what's the flesh and the promise? It's one that has God's word in their heart and will do it.
The seed.
The seed. What is the word of God?
Devar.
The seed.
Well,
The seed is the word.
the
Luke
seed is
8:11.
the word, and the word is the seed. But what is the word?
The power of creation.
Well, no.
The word is God.
The word is God. The word is Yeshua.
Yeah.
In other words, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And so, if the Word is God, and everyone that is in the line of Yeshua had the Word, in other words, they had God in their heart, and He's the one that affected them and brought salvation to the world. And so, in this respect, we know who has God's word in their heart and who doesn't because of the fruit they produce. No,
Evidence of things not seen.
right. So the point I'm getting at is that Sarah knew who the seed of promise was. Abraham was having a hard time recognizing. He was saying, "Can't we do something with Ishmael? Can't Ishmael be?" And God said, "No, he doesn't. He doesn't carry that seed. He was a wild donkey. He didn't have the seed." And I'm not saying that people can't change. It's just that God knew beforehand. That's my opinion. What?
So, something else about the dynamic between the slave girl
Mhm.
and Sarah is that in Hebrew, Hagar,
Mm-hmm.
3,000, 4,000 years later, Hagar.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Hagar is the stranger.
The
That
stranger.
she didn't even care to know her name. She is the stranger. She is the slave girl. She is the womb that I will create a son to offer you as an heir through. Just Sarah's actions. And then one of my favorite thing about this Torah portion and this part of the Torah portion is that the sages say that in the camp there were those that were saying that Sarah didn't bear that child. That is not her child. And on the day that she was weaned, Sarah fed all of the children so that none of the women, nobody could say that that woman did not ever bear a child. That when the day that she weaned Isaac, she fed all of the children in the camp. Just more of the story, but I thought that's hilarious to me.
It is hilarious. I have a story like that. I'll tell you someday. I won't mention it here though. So, despite Abraham's agony, he was told to listen to Sarah, right? But then what did he say about Ishmael? He'd have 12 sons and he would be a great nation. But what did that foment for the future? Conflict.
It's like
And that's what's going on today. Aren't those Muslim nations now Ishmaelites for the most part?
Right. Just like.
World's longest running slave trade family.
Okay, Genesis 21, 22 through 34. At that time, Abimelech and Phicol, the commander of his army, said to Abraham, "God is with you in all that you do. Now therefore swear to me hereby God that you will not deal falsely with me or with my descendants or with my posterity. But as I have dealt kindly with you, so you deal with me and with the land where you have sojourned." And Abraham said, "I will swear." And when Abraham reproved Abimelech about a well of water that Abimelech's servants had seized, Abimelech said, "I do not know who has done this thing. You did not tell me, and I have not heard of it until today." So Abraham took sheep and oxen and gave them to Abimelech, and the two men made a covenant. Abraham set 7 ewe lambs of the flock apart, and Abimelech said to Abraham, "What is the meaning of these 7 ewe lambs that you have set apart?" And he said, "These 7 ewe lambs you will take from my hand, that this may be a witness for me that I dug this well." Therefore that place was called Beersheba, because there both of them swore an oath. So they made a covenant at Beersheba. Then Abimelech and Phicol, the commander of his army, rose up and returned to the land of the Philistines. Abraham planted a tamarisk tree in Beersheba and called there on the name of Yahweh, the everlasting God. And Abraham sojourned many days in the land of the Philistines. So, why did Abraham plant the tree at Beersheba? He made a covenant with Abimelech, the king, at the will of the oath. And what did the sages say about the tree? It was a witness.
The witness.
What are trees in the Bible? Then the age of a man is that of a tree. And then, when Jesus healed the blind man and he said, "What do you see?" And he says, "I see trees." But what was he seeing? He was seeing men. So he planted a tree because it was about the coming seed of the woman that would produce the seed, the trees, the men of the promise. That's what the sages say.
Why a tamarisk?
Isn't that an oak tree? Isn't the tamarisk tree the oak tree?
Maybe bigger.
That's what they translated, alternate.
Did they alternate?
Because I think if you see the oaks of Mamre, that is
Yeah,
Yeah.
also called the terebinth of Mamre, depending on what translation you pick up.
and also the tamarisk.
They have tamaracks in Washington, and they were one.
Not
one tree
tamaracks,
that'll
terebinths.
drop its needles. It's like an evergreen, but it drops its needles.
Yeah.
Not tamarisk, terebinth.
Oh, terebinth?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go on. Genesis 22, 1-24. After these things, God tested Abraham and said to him, "Abraham," and he said, "Here I am." And he said, "Take your son, your only son, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah, and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains which I shall tell you." So Abraham rose early in the morning, saddled his donkey, took 2 of his young men with him, and his son Isaac, and he cut the wood for the burnt offering, and rose and went to the place of which God had told him. On the 3rd day Abraham lifted up his eyes and saw a place from afar. Then Abraham said to his young men, "Stay here with the donkey. I and the boy will go over there and worship and come again to you." And Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering and laid it on Isaac his son. And he took in his hand the fire and the knife. So they went both of them together. And Isaac said to his father Abraham, "My father." And he said, "Here I am, my son." And he said, "Behold, the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering?" And Abraham said, "God will provide for himself the lamb for a burnt offering, my son." So they went both of them together. When they came to the place of which God had told him, Abraham built the altar there and laid the wood in order and bound Isaac his son and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. Then Abraham reached out his hand and took the knife to slaughter his son. But the angel of Yahweh called to him from heaven and said, "Abraham, Abraham." And he said, "Here I am." And he said, "Do not lay your hand on the boy or do anything to him, for now I know that you fear God, seeing you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me." And Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, behind him was a ram caught in the thicket by its horns. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered it up as a burnt offering instead of his son. So Abraham called the name of that place, "Yahweh will provide." As it is said to this day, "On the mountain of Yahweh it shall be provided." And the angel of Yahweh called to Abraham a second time from heaven and said, "By myself I have sworn, declares Yahweh, because you have done this and have not withheld your son, your only son, I will surely bless you, and I will surely multiply your offspring as the stars of heaven and as the sand of the seashore. And your offspring shall possess the gate of his enemies, and in your offspring shall all the nations of the earth be blessed, because you have obeyed my voice." So Abraham returned to his young men, and they arose and went together to Beersheba. And Abraham lived in Beersheba. Now after these things it was told to Abraham, "Behold, Milcah also bore children to your brother Nahor, Uz his firstborn, Buz his brother, Kemuel the father of Aram, Chesed, Hazo, Pildash, Yodapah, Betuel. Betuel fathered Rebekah. These 8 Milcah bore to Nahor, Abraham's brother. Moreover, his concubine, whose name was Reumah, bore Taba, Gaham, Tahash, and Maachah. A lot of folks there. Why are they giving all that genealogy at the end of the...
So you know who's who in the zoo.
So you remember that?
So we'll know who's who in the zoo.
The Jews go by their lineage,
Mm-hmm.
so that's showing the lineage that they came from.
So, what is this, the supreme test of Abraham, the Akedah? So, the word that it used for knife, y'all know what that word is in Hebrew? It means food maker. In other words, it's all, if you look it up in modern Hebrew now, it's called butcher's knife. It can be translated as knife, but in the literal meaning is food maker. So he took the food maker. Kind of interesting, isn't it? The spiritual food or the blessing for the world. Is that a picture of Yeshua? Is he's the bread that came down from heaven to bring life? The food maker. How often is the test of Abraham recalled in Jewish prayer services? Did you say every day? Every day. It's in their daily prayers that Abraham made the sacrifice of his only son. So, why did God put Abraham to the test?
And later it says to see what was in his heart.
That's right. It's written, the Lord tests the righteous.
Yes.
And why does he test the righteous? To reward them for their righteousness. In other words, that's the deal.
He already knows, so he's showing them.
Well, it's like everything you do in life. There's a reward for it. If you do mediocre, your reward is mediocre.
Yeah.
If you do good, most of the time your reward is good. And God, he made everything like that. I mean, he says, what good is it if there's no test? You know.
Except,
Go ahead.
so when we rebuild a submarine,
Uh-huh.
we test the components before we put them back in. And then we test the systems before it goes out to sea. And then we take it and we go give it sea trials to test it before we send it to battle.
Well, but that's the way everything is. That's the way life is.
Well, it used to be. Now we have participation trophies.
Okay. Now
Now that's the question. Do you
still-
think God gives participation trophies?
No. The world hasn't changed. People's behavior has changed, but the world has not changed. It's still. It's like what I always told my kids. I said, you get out of something what you put into it. If you put very little into it, you get very little out. And if you expect more out of it than you put in, then you're going to be disappointed. That's life.
That's right.
Don't be upset for the rewards of the things that you didn't do.
That's right. I had a whole bunch of questions, but I'm going to skip them all because I want to get to.
Calvin.
Well, no. Why does the portion end with a list of the 8 children of Milcah, Abraham's sister-in-law, bore in Mesopotamia?
It's all about Rivka.
Yes, it's all about
Rivka.
It's all about Rivka. It's all about the propagation of the seed, getting the right people together for things to work the way in God's plan, right?
Can't get to the seed of woman to crush the head without getting through Rivka. Or Ruth.
Okay, so now we can go to Calvin. And I couldn't find a good cartoon this time. I started to use the last one. It says, you say when you become a father, you get a book that explains everything in the world. We got a book that explains everything in the world. I don't know if y'all know that. And he says right, so I wonder if he has the right book. Can I see it? Nope, you can't see it. Sorry. Why not? It tells what it's like to raise a kid. So, you're not allowed to know that until it's too late to have one. Not to have it here, sorry. No, he's saying, you know, if you know what woes you were gonna bring on you, you'd never wanna have one of these little burgers. Most children are worth the problems. I'll say that. Next week is Sarah. Sarah's life, the life of Sarah. But what is it really about?
Her death.
Huh?
Her death.
Her death.
No.
About her life. And she dies.
No, it starts off about Joseph.
Yeah.
It starts off with this is the life of Sarah, and then it goes into Joseph. So, who was Joseph?
Grandson.
Grandson.
Yes, but who was Joseph? The life of Sarah, Joseph was the one that brought the promised seed.
Yeah.
In other words, he took them into Egypt and preserved life. Right? Okay. So y'all read that next week and get all the things where how God preserved life. Let's say the blessing. Join me, please. Blessed are you, Lord God, King of the universe, who gave to us the Torah of truth, Yeshua our Messiah, and life everlasting, set in our midst. Blessed are you, Lord, giver of the Torah. And in Hebrew, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Toret emet, Yeshua Meshikenu, b'kayhi olam natah b'tukenu, Baruch atah Adonai notin ha-Torah. Great peace have those who love your law, and nothing can make them stumble.
The way of the wicked is like deep darkness. They do not know what makes them stumble.
That's right. So y'all be careful as you leave today.
Thanks, Paul.
He had no form or beauty that we should even look at him. Rejected and despised, our faces turned away. But by his bruises we were healed. And he was wounded because of our sin, the suffering servant. He was wounded because of our sin. He never deserved it. By his bruises we were healed. Surely he bore our grief and carried all our suffering. Taking our punishment and bringing us shalom. By his bruises we were healed. And he was wounded because of our sin, the suffering servant. He was wounded because of our sin. He never deserved it. By his bruises we die, but silent as a lamb would be. It pleased the heart of God to crush the righteous one. The will of Adonai to crush his only son. Because of our sin, the suffering servant, he was wounded. Because of our sin, he never deserved it. By his bruises we were healed. By his bruises we